As a way of introduction, my name is Kirsten, and I am the co-founder of Drupal for Gov. We're the ones who actually put on this event. And I am here today to introduce our 2021 Drupal GovCon closing keynote speaker, Kanika Watson from the Food and Drug Administration. Kanika will talk with us about the rapid migration to digital, driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, and how this has transformed the way organizations engage with the public. She'll discuss how her national network of public affairs experts stationed in cities across the country pivoted almost overnight to 100% virtual stakeholder engagement and outreach. Kanika is an award-winning communication strategist and creative storyteller who transforms the way organizations engage with diverse, global audiences through meaningful brand messaging and innovative platforms. She's led communications programs for Johns Hopkins University, the American Heart Association, and is currently the director of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's National Public Affairs Program. Everyone, please join me in welcoming my friend, Kanika Watson.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad you can join. We're going to talk today, as Kirsten talked about, stakeholder engagement. I want to talk about how that shift has been for my organization in particular, but I also want to give you some schooling too on some of the stakeholder engagement that we've been doing and what we've been up to based on how COVID has shifted everything. So our focus today will be on the acceleration of digitalization and driven by, of course, the pandemic and how it transforms the way that agencies engage with the public. We'll review a case study about FDA and that 100% pivot. Yep, a lot of you did it. And we did too. And it's interesting how that translated into stakeholder engagement. So we'll talk a bit about that. We'll also talk about how we learned at the pace of the crisis. All of us did that. And for us, for having 70 years now, next year will be 70 years that we've been doing our great work as public affairs for FDA, that was a huge shift for us. We've been doing in-person events and in-person engagements throughout. So this was different. And then we'll talk about ways to reimagine person-to-person experiences. And a lot of that you guys are doing today in this very conference. And then, of course, how to continuously examine and address inclusivity. That's really critical. And that's an area that's been uncovered as we've learned more about how we operate in this digital space. And then we'll close with how we talk about COVID-19 and what's next in the digital first stakeholder engagement realm. So let's talk about first how transforming stakeholder engagement in a COVID-19 world has been working for us. So first question I wanted to address, because many may not be aware, and those you might already know, what is stakeholder engagement? And so really it's an ongoing commitment and understanding and interaction. And again, my group in particular, we interact in person. That's what we do, and that's what we've been doing for years. We do have a digital strategy, but our focus has been primarily in person. But it really is taking the views into account and making decisions based on what we're hearing from our stakeholders. Always listening, always understanding, and taking that back to our organization so it informs how we do our work. It's also about effective engagement and how we build that through targeted outreach. That's the bread and butter of my group. And also education. And of course, it's two-way, but it's been in person two-way for years. And so it really is critical, especially not just in the time of crisis like how COVID, the pandemic has been, but also in the times of opportunity as well. So these are some of my folks. We have a pretty decent size group. And so these are some of the things that we were doing before COVID. So how is stakeholder engagement performed? We do it in so many different ways, but our primary focus in FDA has really been on the outreach and education events and activities. That's when we go out into the communities. That's when we work directly with key partners and organizations and share information about what FDA does. We talk about the critical issues that are of the day, and we provide resources and information to folks who aren't always able to access them. We also build campaigns for building public support. We also do community-based programming and really getting into our communities, our diverse communities across the country, hundreds and hundreds. And we also are involved with media relations. We've been doing that for years. We have several folks who are spokespersons in their local communities. They're on the local news. They're actually, working directly with reporters. And then exhibits and conferences like what we have here we're at today with Drupal GovCon. And you'll see in the pictures, there are some folks here that are exhibiting and sharing information and resources. And then, of course, key national, regional, and local partnerships. We work really, really closely with a lot of organizations, really wanting to find opportunities to partner so we can leverage and mutually beneficially work together to leverage resources, information, and create that multiplier effect so that what we're sharing out, they can share with their networks. And that's been really important for us. And then, of course, strategic collaborations, a big piece of the pie. That's something that we continuously build and grow, been growing for close to 70 years. And our folks really pride themselves in the work that they do to really support the mission of FDA and also making sure they reach key stakeholders. So right now, more than ever, stakeholder engagement is important, as you probably could only guess, especially in the time of crisis. We really want to make sure that we are not remiss in missing out on what our stakeholders' needs, questions, concerns, and knowing what they need directly and providing that information. And just making sure that we stay connected. We don't want to lose touch with folks, especially during a crisis. And like what we've been dealing with COVID, we've made it an important factor of the work to continuously work with our groups. It's also for sustainability. It really helps us to keep long-term success of our program. It informs all that we do at FDA. And also, organizations just need to make sure that they're addressing the wider diverse communities. And this is part of what we call building public trust. And so that's really, really important, something that we do all the time. And it's on top of mind for us. So definitely, more than ever, stakeholder engagement has been important for the FDA for close to 70 years. But right now, this is probably one of the most critical times we've seen in history. So COVID has reshaped the stakeholder engagement landscape, as I mentioned. And so a lot of organizations like ourselves, we are, obviously working, and we do have digital strategy in place. Of course we do. But a lot of organizations are gradually transforming. And so where the need and the desire to move forward with digital probably wasn't as urgent as it is now. Some of those organizations have 5 to 10 year roadmaps that they had planned prior to COVID to slowly transition and move into a more digital first focused approach to their work. We were getting there, but I'm going to tell you, just like with all of you, COVID struck, organizations had to figure out what next. How do we continue to stay engaged with our audiences? How do we continue to stay engaged with our partners? What do we do now? And so it really helped us because now we had some ideas and thoughts, and we were moving into that space already with digital, but it really forced us to move fast for full speed ahead, like all of you. And we had to be creative, especially in the beginning when a lot of things weren't quite figured out yet. We were still trying to get our feet wet in the digital space, especially when it came to face-to-face interactions. How do we work with our stakeholders and still keep those direct connects, but digitally, virtually? And so we had to think about those things and work through them. And as time went on, we started to really see how things were changing. The whole space of digital was changing. And so it really showcases the value of digital and the engagement approaches that we are utilizing day to day. And it's a part of our structure, part of our function. And I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. So one of the things that really interested me, I did some reading, and we've vaulted, this is according to McKinsey and Company, and also another study I read, that we vaulted 10 years forward in digital adoption. And this is just within 19 months. There's some other studies out there that have different years, figured out here, but that's a huge shift for a lot of organizations, especially you guys know how government organizations can be. We're not always the quickest, but we do some great things. But it is a huge shift for organizations that are not quite at where they should be for digital. So that was huge for us. We were shifting dramatically, and we were trying to make these changes at the pace of this crisis as it was unfolding. So 97% of enterprise decision makers who were recently surveyed by McKinsey said that COVID-19 sped up digital transformation for them, their organizations. And it wasn't just the stakeholder piece, which is what I'm focused on today, but it included their internal operation. I mean, it was a huge shift. Imagine, I know you all have experienced this, but shifting your whole operation internally, your employees, your workforce, but in the same time, you're also trying to make that shift externally. And so that was a challenge. But many organizations have definitely pushed through, like ourselves. We pivoted literally overnight. I mean, it was very quick. It was no time to stop and breathe and think it through fully before we made any changes. We just moved right into digital. We had to stay connected. We had to keep the momentum and keep those partnerships going. So that's something that we ended up doing. And that was something I think for our team proved a lot. And I'll share that in a moment. Another study also suggested that 75% of people who were surveyed who had never really used digital channels, and at the first time was really when COVID hit, they do plan to continue using them post-pandemic. And then 92% of organizations plan to expand digital communications going forward, and we're one of them. So those are some of the stats that I found pretty interesting that I wanted to share. And a lot of you probably are in all of these, meaning that they connect with you. But that's our reality, and that's what we've been looking at. So now I'm going to shift a little bit and talk about a case of disruption. So this is our case study. Talk to you a little bit more detail about what my team did. So this is how we shifted to a digital first local stakeholder engagement model. And like I said, it was, obviously it was fraught with challenges, but we were able to make that shift, and we are thankful for it because it did expand our reach and did give us some advantages as well. And then there's some disadvantages, which we'll also touch on as part of this discussion. But before we do that, let me give you a little background on FDA. In case you don't know much about FDA, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, really our mission is public health. That's the bottom line for FDA. We're all about public health and ensuring foods are safe, ensuring foods are wholesome, sanitary, and properly labeled. So everything you eat pretty much in a given day has been inspected by FDA. Ensuring that human and veterinary drugs, and of course, vaccines and biological products, and all the medical devices that you may encounter when you go into a medical visit, want to make sure that those things are safe and effective. That's part of our work as well. We also protect the public from electronic product radiation, and also assuring cosmetics and dietary supplements are safe and also properly labeled. We also are in the business of regulating tobacco products. And finally, advancing public health by helping speed innovations. So that's where FDA is. And just to give you some background on what we do, all the great work we do, but our true mission is public health. So these are some of my folks. Stephen, actually, you'll meet in a little while during the Q&A. He is my supervisor, he supervises one of our 2 teams of public affairs specialists that are across the nation. And there are a couple of our staff right there. And that's just an example of some of the work we did pre-COVID. So let's talk about what the team is known for. So the FDA's public affairs program, just a little history, has been around, like you heard me say at the top, for 70 years. Next year will be our 70 years in existence. And so we were really, part of, I would say, a history that stretches back to when FDA was really encountering some issues where they needed to be able to get to communities and share information that they were sharing more broadly, but needed to get into specific areas, underserved populations, and other types of special populations to ensure the messaging was getting there. And so public affairs became the focus, and it was very impactful. And so it's been in existence since the 50s. So we are the boots on the ground communicators. We are also our community-based educators and storytellers. That's our day-to-day. That's what we do. We are the folks at FDA who get into the communities and talk to individuals, partner with organizations. And we also are storytellers. I mean, we have a lot to share about the work that we do at FDA and we want people to know about it. We also try to put a face to the work. We represent FDA. We are FDA. And so we want to make sure that all the great things that our folks across the country are doing, the folks who do the inspections, the folks who are regulating, all the compliance folks, we want to make sure everyone understands the great work that happens here. We also have nearly, again, 7 decades, but we're award-winning engagement. We've been doing this for years. And we also have a strong background. A lot of our folks have a lot of expertise in public health. And then we have a growing national network. Our network increases, and especially in the wake of COVID, has increased tremendously considering the fact that we have shifted to digital. We have the in-person and we also have the digital aspect as well. We have about 27 experts, and we are geographically dispersed across the country. So my staff is in a lot of the major cities and states. And also we have folks that are in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We have representation through there, as well as our Maryland headquarters. And again, we are uniquely positioned to really meet our customers where they are. And, obviously virtually now we meet them where they are. And we also make sure that we connect with industry, academia, the health community. We also work closely with local, state, and territorial and tribal partners. And again, we want to make sure that people understand we also are leaders in multicultural audience engagement. So moving forward, our public health mission. So again, like many of you, we were really, trying to grapple with this whole acute disruption with COVID and our inability to really do what we do every day, what we do so well. Our folks are so dedicated, so committed, and just, awesome. So many of them have been around for more than 20 years doing this great work. They are so dedicated. And so really at this time, when the instability hit us, it really made us think really deeply about, wow, this is really the time when we need to be here for our folks. So we felt that managing relationships, the ones that we build every day, was very, very critical. And so our first goal, though, myself, Stephen, and our other supervisor, Bruno, really, really wanted to ensure, and this is how we've been doing, from the beginning, that we stabilize our folks first before we can do anything. We have to make sure that we're good before we can make sure folks externally are good. And that's what we did. We made sure that we stabilize our operations, safeguarding our team, making sure that they're comfortable and they're safe. And then from this posture, we were able to move into creativity mode. It was difficult because there was a lot of pressure, stress, uncertainty. A lot of people were not comfortable, and we were among them. But we moved forward on our public health mission because we knew how critical it was to continue the work. So we did look at the future. We did take a look. We said, look, a lot of these organizations are moving into digital. We have been doing some digital, but we really, really love that in-person engagement. That's what we do best. But we need to make sure that digital is central to every interaction to ensure that we are still connecting with people. And so that is when we shifted to our 100% digital. And so for us, learning at the pace of the crisis was interesting. And, a lot of changes occurred throughout our process. We were literally day by day trying to figure out what could we do differently, or how can we align with what's happening, globally, because people were changing, organizations were changing, the way we were connecting was changing, everything was changing. So it really increased our need to learn. And so we really were doing that work. We were learning in real time during the crisis, and we were learning to scale quickly. And we still are, because we're not out of it. We're still in the midst of it. And so digital, like I said, really was part of what we did, but the abrupt shift was challenging. And we knew that imprecise, inconsistent, delayed comms, in this case, communications, would create uncertainty. And the public trust, like I told you guys at the beginning of our talk, was very important to us. And this is the time when you don't want to lose it, because when you lose public trust, it happens pretty quickly. And it's really, as you probably know, really difficult to get back. So we had to do some really nimble analysis. We weren't able to do any major studies, right? But everybody was doing this, but learning creatively, and then really looking forward to how we could move forward with our digital. So a couple things came out of what we did. As we kept advancing through the pandemic, two major outcomes emerged from the team, which really I love this came about. It was a new wave of ingenuity that came about in our team. And it's actually pretty refreshing in the sense that we were able to really sit down and think through a lot of things creatively, as well as resiliency, because we try things, we do new things, and we try things again. We don't give up. We keep going until we find what works. Not all the events and all the opportunities that we had worked the best way possible initially, but we kept trying. We didn't, stop. We continued going, and things turned out well. Agility and flexibility to adjust to the pandemic as it evolved, that was important. And that's one of the words that we use a lot in our team now, the agility piece, because that is something we've definitely learned through this pandemic, is how to be agile. And so a couple things that we were able to do to thrive during this period, we did reinvent our digital approach. Like I said, we had digital as part of our strategy, but we didn't make it a digital first approach, because in person is our bread and butter. But again, we tailored our messaging across digital platforms and audiences. We made sure that our messaging was audience specific, especially now, especially when it related to COVID messaging too. We wanted to make sure that we were reaching folks and understanding their needs and concerns, taking them back to the agency and helping them to understand that so that can inform how we do our work. We also developed content online, and we wanted to make sure it was more accessible to people. That was really important for us, to make sure that even though we're not able to meet with you in person, these are resources that you have at your fingertips. And we'll talk a little bit about the inclusivity piece too, and how we were able to make this work for folks who couldn't access online, because there were people who couldn't. Also, we transitioned social media as our new face-to-face. We did use our accounts to get out there and make those connections, to get the attention of folks, to continue the work, to really have deeper conversations offline and pull people into our world. So that was something that we did a lot of as well. And then again, we unleashed nimble, empowered teams, wanted to make sure we created a culture of creativity. We wanted to make sure we have a national plan right now that we are building right now as I'm speaking, literally. And part of that work is getting our team members involved and to really hear their ideas and apply them to the work that we do, and to foster an opportunity for them to boost their creativity and to align it with our goals. Sorry, my slides aren't advancing. Okay. Reimagining person-to-person stakeholder experiences. So that's important for us. And that's really in the form of events when we think about those things for us. So stakeholder engagement has taken on a whole new meaning. We are operating in a very fluid environment. And we do, that sometime soon, hopefully, we'll be able to resume in person. But really, the virtual element has been the primary approach for us. Like I said, 100% has been where we are. And we knew that the future holds a different sort of picture. But social media channels was one way we were able to do that. Sorry. And then also virtual events. We were able to lean into technology, as you see here, just like here, the events that happened here, the expo pieces, and other events you may have been to. We've been able to really lean into that. And we're also adopting that in our own strategy. And so you'll see here an example of one of my staff who has been really active in the digital and virtual event technology space. And just here, created the booth, the whole thing like you've seen when you're at events. And it was an opportunity that we had never encountered, and most of us hadn't, which was being able to provide information and resources directly to our constituents, our stakeholders, in this format where we could provide resources, upload them, provide video, and provide them with more information that they needed that they can link back to the website, answer questions directly, all those different types of things, and still be able to meet what our goal is, to really educate and make sure that we're able to reach those populations. We also were utilizing tools that were publicly available to maximize access. We were thinking about ways to ensure the events we were attending, the presentations we were giving allowed maximum access, so we could make sure that we were thinking about the inclusivity of these events. We also gave people a lot of opportunities through varied means and channels to engage with us. We wanted to make sure they knew how to reach us even after the event. So not just at the event, but after the event. And also ensuring everyone had a path to engage and at their own pace. We understand people are taking in technology at a very rapid pace. And for some people, it's overwhelming. And we get that. And so that's something we're thinking about and addressing as we work. We also wanted to ensure process transparency and looking for ways to make sure people knew how to get to us, even at these events. Because again, a lot of people don't understand how these work over time, though, as we've been doing this for almost a year and a half plus. It's now second nature, but in the beginning it was difficult. So we wanted to make sure we provided ultra information. So these are some examples really quickly about how we've adapted our social media based on the times. And so you'll see here the example on the far left here that I'm circling. I don't know if you can see. This is a tweet. We had to really start to think about trying to ensure that we could still attract our stakeholders and still get messages out that are pretty clear. And so the FDA, the US FDA account that we have for the agency, we took on different tone. And this is really based on the different times we're in. FDA and other agencies like the government agencies, many of you work, are more in the serious, authoritative, official tone. And so you'll see here Here's one example of how we had to shift how we spoke to our audiences to get really critical messages out. You are not a horse. You are not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it. And this was related to a tweet that we were sending out to help protect individuals. Why you should not use ivermectin to treat or prevent COVID-19. And so those are ways that we were trying to get the attention and sort of break through the noise. You'll see another one on the right of this tweet where we talk about cicadas. Remember them? I know many of you do. I know I do. But the question was, do you know that cicadas are related to shrimp and lobster? If you do, don't eat them, because if you're allergic to seafood, then you'll be allergic to cicadas. And so these were a little humorous, but at the same time, very serious messages. But we wanted to break through the noise to ensure that our stakeholders were getting the information that they needed. You'll also see on the far left bottom, there was one of my staff there getting messages out again through her local news and also a local virtual conference to ensure that her local community in Baltimore was getting what they needed as far as COVID information and also nutrition information. So very, very important things. And so then again, we've been thinking outside the box a bit more than I think we have. Like I said, we're traditional, we're a public health organization, we're a regulatory organization. So, creativity is there, but I know at times that we're a little slower than others. So we're looking at ways to really try to be more innovative. And so a couple of ways that we've been doing that is right now we're working on several projects coming soon. We've been working really hard on targeted digital channels and vehicles. So we're creating new channels, creating new vehicles. And this is really in the wake of COVID. We want to be able to still reach our constituents, our stakeholders, our partners in a way that will meet them where they are. And thinking about, again, digital inclusion, making sure that we have a digital inclusion strategy so we are reaching everyone. Virtual exhibits, we're thinking about developing one of those. Stephen is working on that now, who you'll meet in a moment. Digital resource centers and hubs, we're working on those as we speak. Our social media platforms, we're hoping to expand those, especially as it relates to what we do in public affairs. And we also have a digital content strategy that we're launching very soon. And we've been really building from scratch a new multimedia and visual storytelling arm. So we're doing a lot compared to, how digital now has shifted how we do our work. This is our focus. This is where we are. And that's why we say digital first. These are just a quick few highlights of some of the things that we've been able to do under the digital umbrella. Our outreach and education activities, 460 plus digital. Presentations and panels, 200 plus digital. And I'm just going around a little bit here, but 80 plus digital recruitment events, all the messaging that we've been doing, digital, all the broadcasts, digital. So you'll see a lot of what we were doing a lot in person. Everything has shifted to digital. So I don't want to be remiss in talking about and examining and addressing inclusivity to bridge the digital divide. Yes, the pandemic has definitely offered opportunities for those who are geographically in different locations to be able to attend events. So there is some level of inclusivity there. But on the other coin, it has also exposed deep inequalities. And that really has been an issue I know that larger organizations are working on, but we also have that in our minds as well. And we want to make sure that virtual engagement, virtual stakeholder engagement includes everybody. And so of course, with the right tools, everyone's voices, stakeholder engagement can certainly help make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind. Some of the non-digital approaches to reach vulnerable populations that we've been able to put forth. And again, we're working on more opportunities and more ways to build on this strategy. So this is just the beginning. And these are a lot of things that my folks did, especially at the very beginning of the pandemic when we were still feeling it out, trying to figure out how to make things move, how to shift forward. But the digital divide, it does affect all generations, both rural and urban communities. And it also impacts a wide variety of industries and sectors. And also it does affect the underserved populations. And we want to be very mindful of that. And so some of the non-digital engagement strategies that we were still able to employ and others that we know other organizations were able to employ as well during this time included the traditional calls. Folks, we were doing that. That is something we do anyway, but we were doing it more, especially as we were feeling our way out. And we really were thinking about those with no internet or have computer literacy skills and can't navigate social and can't get news and information. We were also mailing, and we did this. We had some folks that we were getting questions, actually, inquiries from incarcerated individuals. And so they had questions about what was going on. They also had questions generally about FDA and some of the things that we were announcing. And we wanted to make sure, despite COVID, we offered responses, we gave them information and resources, and we mailed them. So we were doing that at the height of the pandemic as well. Also capitalizing on existing community networks. We have been building relationships for years, but now we're really relying and leaning on these folks to really help to multiply that information and amplify that information. Same with community champions, and then also making those deep connections with our state, local, and territorial and tribal partners to make sure that the news and information coming out of the agency is reaching those individuals in non-digital ways so that everyone can get access to our information. So the last piece is really, around what's next for digital first stakeholder engagement. So of course, you guys are seeing this now. It's happening right in front of our eyes. The future of stakeholder engagement and all events and anything else related to that, we're moving into a hybrid world. Of course, we're seeing more organizations, more events opening up to have a sort of a mishmash of in-person and also the virtual piece to it. And no matter how we come out of this, how things sort of work out, it's important to still have a hybrid model in place so that you can still address the needs of those who are logging in virtually to your engagements, and then also those who are in person. The rich experiences of in-person events, plus the reach and the convenience of virtual events, they're scalable, they're cost-effective. All those good things is definitely the new standard. As you see here today, we're at Drupal GovCon and we are all virtual. Organizations are embracing this new reality, and it is also part of the way that we're starting to move forward and have been for the past year and a half plus on our stakeholder engagement strategy. So tomorrow's digital is here to stay. It's going nowhere, people, nowhere. So nothing replaces the power of connectedness. That's what we say. We were just talking about that not too long ago, how much we miss that part of our work. But it certainly is, when you think about the reality of where we are, the virtual element has to be part of the approach that you have. And definitely ensuring that, part of that is inclusivity, ensuring that you have thought about, understand, and have really looked through what your reach is, and ensure that you're not leaving folks out and mitigating that inclusivity if that's an issue for you. Mitigating that exclusion. And then also our rapid shift to transformation. It's unique. It's been an interesting ride, and it has definitely birthed some creative pieces to the work that we all are doing. And this is only the beginning. People are saying that the future is, how we engage as a society will never be the same. It will never be the same based on how this pandemic has shaped our world. And so I'll leave you with this. The COVID pandemic, did accelerate our transformation. It changed everything we do. At FDA, it really shifted our entire business model, our operation from a stakeholder engagement for local communities tremendously. But it didn't stop the passion. It didn't stop the work. It didn't stop the connecting. It didn't stop the ingenuity, figuring out how to navigate through this. It actually birthed some really exciting new ways for us to connect. And it actually extended and broadened our reach in some ways as well. And we're so, looking forward to seeing, what's next. Of course, we all want this pandemic to end any day now, right? But the reality is that it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So we have to all lean into this even more than before, but also keeping in mind, like I said earlier, thinking about building inclusivity and in building inclusive digital strategies, thinking about the broader sweep of your stakeholders. Everyone needs to get the information that you need. And we want to make sure that we do that thinking as part of our strategy in order to keep pace with tomorrow's digital. And that's all I have. Thank you. So we're going to, I guess, move into Q&A.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? You can hear me, Kanika?
I can hear you.
Great. I actually have a question from Josh that came in early on in the presentation, but it has to do with our stakeholders and maybe providing a little bit more information about who those folks are and who we consider our stakeholders, which
Okay.
it's pretty broad.
Yeah, it is pretty broad. But before we do that, I just want to introduce Stephen King. He
Sure.
is one of my one of the two supervisors on my team, and he manages, as I said earlier, about half the team. So he's got about 10 public affairs specialists nationwide that he has managed, and he's been with the organization for what, 30 plus years?
30
Yeah.
years, yeah.
Yep. It's great. So our stakeholders are very broad, and that's a great question that you asked. We have quite a few, and of course, it ranges. And so we do work with public health organizations. We do work, of course, with consumers, academia. We also work with state, local, territorial, and tribal organizations and partners and officials. And that's a large piece of our work as well. And then we also extend, like we said, academia has been interesting for us for the past year and a half. We've been working on recruitment, which has been a huge area that we've really shifted into. We did it all along, but not at the magnitude, I would say, after COVID, believe it or not. But our stakeholders are quite a wide range, and we get a lot of questions, honestly, from those stakeholders. And those questions can range from COVID-related questions all the way to food questions, all the way to cosmetics, drugs, you name it. So it's a broad sweep of individuals, but they are local. We focus on the local end of it. So our folks that are stationed across the country work very closely with their communities and their community partners. And so, again, a range of stakeholders from the health, from the academia, all the way through to our state, local, territorial, and tribal.
Yeah, it's important consumers, everyday consumers.
Yes.
You probably saw the slide that we had 3,300 inquiries. A lot of those do come from consumers every day, and we strive to address that information. But I used to do the public affairs job in the field years ago, and I always just explained that my stakeholder is anybody and everybody that I come into contact with, because truly, me being a boots on the ground FDAer, they probably aren't going to come into contact with many other FDA folks. So, we really wanted to make sure that, when they interact with us, that they have a positive, experience, and that we kind of do build that public trust to let them know, we're here to listen, help, and do what we can. In that vein, we also got a comment from Karen that said, during the pandemic, it really must have been even more important for us to get information out to citizens and stakeholders. And of course, how challenging that could be. And just the ways that we did it were, obviously different, but also important. We push out a lot of information, and Kanika, I know you spoke to this, but it was on one of the slides that for every COVID-19 announcement that the agency had, we would push that out to organizations. And those organizations are what we would consider multiplier organizations. So they would help carry our message to their stakeholders. And for every COVID-19, we had about 16,000 organizations nationwide that received the information and then further pushed it out on our behalf, which was really important during, and still is during COVID-19.
We're still doing it. We're going to do some numbers on that. We've been doing it quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'm looking through. Okay. I got a question from Peter. So Peter says, what about people without even a smartphone, and those that are in rural communities and that don't have that high-speed internet that we've relied on so heavily during the pandemic? And so I'll leave it there, but he does have a part 2 to that.
Okay.
I will. I'll start us off if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Yeah. So a lot of, and we've done this for years and years and years, but we've worked very closely with the rural health organizations that are nationwide. So our folks have always found it, part of their their experience to get information to the rural health organizations. That again is a multiplier organization that can help us carry the water, if you will, to those that may not have the same types of technology or access to technology that others do. And sometimes we take for granted that we have that access. So they're one of our main stakeholders that we do rely on to help us get that information out to those communities. And Kanika, I don't know if you have any additional information you'd like to share around that.
Sure. And in addition to that, I mean, just thinking through from our perspective and how we've been able to just really, as I said, learn at the pace of the crisis and apply some of the traditional, and I'm going to say it, old school methods. We had to really ensure that we were meeting the needs of our organizations, our constituents, our stakeholders. We wanted to make sure that we did employ some. So like the example I gave, with the incarcerated individuals who were reaching out to us, we could have been like, well, the COVID's happening, we can't answer that. But we were like, no, we need to get in there. We need to make sure that we respond. And even though postal mail is, a little suspect right now, we wanted to make sure that we were able to get the information, critical questions they were asking addressed and answered, and make sure they feel heard, especially at a time like this. So yeah, we've been looking at more traditional approaches to ensure that we do address that digital divide. It's true, it's real, and it's still happening. And we're going to work towards trying to find new ways going forward to do this work. So it's never ending, but I'm glad that we were able to stop and really look at that and ensure we factor that into our approach.
Yeah, and just to tack on about since it was actually my staff member that received the letter from somebody that was incarcerated, because we're not in the office. The way that kind of worked was our administrative folks. Somebody is always, at least one person is in the office and obtaining the mail and checking the mail. So what they did is they ended up scanning the letter for us and they sent it. And we were able to do the research and this particular inquiry was something from the early 90s that this person was interested in, and how FDA made a decision on this particular product. So it took a little research on our part, but we were able to get everything that they needed, but we had to then relay that information back to them via the mail. So we were able to do that using the administrative folks that were in the office. Again, we sent it to them, and they printed it out and put it in the envelope, and they mailed it back to the individual. But interestingly enough, I mean, if we were in the office, it would be pretty easy to have been done. But most of us, some of us don't have printers. And in fact, the government during COVID has encouraged us not to print things out just because we're not in that safe space, secured space of our government buildings, and they don't want anything to kind of get out into the public. So obviously we need to shred things at home and all of that. So it's been challenging that way too. Yep. Just trying to make sure we have everything we need.
Yep.
Well, so the second part of the question, I'm not sure we might be able to answer this, but I will put it out there. The second part is the government running its own cloud or relying on Amazon or some other commercial vendor? And I think that probably, and please, Peter, let us know more in the chat, but I think that has to do with, a lot of the external stuff that we have going on. But I know we obviously use SharePoint and as our main data sharing platform inside of FDA.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that question, Peter. Sorry.
Yeah, that's unfortunately our IT folks would be the ones that would work on that or know the answer to that. Let's see. So Elijah, there's another one. I don't know if we're going to be able to answer that as well, but it looks like we had a question about hearing about a strategy for hacking around ATOs, and it looks like there's a final BOF room left for 2:15. I'm not sure if everybody's seeing that in the chat, just so that you know. It looks like Kirsten is actually answering for us, so we much appreciate that. That's a little outside of the realm of what we do.
Yeah. So I have a question for folks, and you can put in the chat. Have you experienced? I know a lot of you, work on more on the digital dev tech side, but I want to see if there are folks who do have some best practices or even had experiences and challenges with the stakeholder piece, working very closely and engaging with the public and finding new ways to do it. But how did that go for you? I know for us, like I said, it was definitely we learned as we went along, and there was nothing to look to really guide how we did it. We just did it. But as we started doing it, we got better at it, right? Because it became the way of life for us, and it became how we did our work every day and how we are continuously doing it. And we're building on it day by day. And like I said, we have a few things that we are going into. And Stephen, maybe give a little background on the digital piece that we're working on with the virtual exhibit. That's going to be something that we're hoping to get off the ground at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very passionate about this project. As you saw during Kanika's slide presentation, one of our staff members actually attended a conference that they had a lot of technology, which was fantastic. It was the first time we had seen this software that you were able to actually build a virtual exhibit within their exhibit hall, if you will, their virtual exhibit hall. And it really got us thinking, even though we had started talking about it, but once we saw it visually, it really got us excited and motivated and really got our creative juices flowing, that we would love to build a virtual exhibit on fda.gov, which is our external website, so that people could come and visit us there anytime, so 24/7, and then also have links to information that we knew were, was of the top importance. Obviously, COVID would be currently the top of the heap when it came to the information that folks would want to see and get access to initially, but also things that are pretty evergreen, things like food safety.
Right.
Things like food safety during, natural disasters is a very large one. If you don't have power, what do you do? Or how long do things, stay okay to eat? So we get those types of things. And we wanted to also have that interaction. So being able to ask us questions, and we answer them anyway every day, but having that ability to just kind of have a one-stop shop where you can get information from FDA on all different things. And then also asking us questions and getting responses fairly quickly from us. So we really, having kind of a 3D virtual exhibit, if you will, to since we do this all the time anyway, to be able to point folks to, not just for the times that they interact with us, but also as new issues evolve, new things come up. If they have questions, they can always find us. We are obviously on fda.gov, but we thought that this would be a more forward-thinking digital approach to actually obtaining that information and making it a little more interesting and interactive. We've already built some quizzes that will go on to the platform, the virtual exhibit, and a lot of school age folks like to get in there and ask questions and find out things or interesting history about FDA, which we all have access to that way, but we want to kind of roll it into this virtual exhibit to make it really cool, fun, and interesting and interactive.
And I think another thing too for us, we've stepped further into, we were doing this all along, have been doing it ever since we started, but storytelling has been huge for us. And that's something that we really, really want to continue building out. And so we're looking at more creative ways, as I mentioned earlier. One of the things that was born out of the shift in how we did our work was the capability of a multimedia. And so we've been doing that, all along, but it's been more on the internal side. We want to really get out there and provide that colorful story, add color to what we do. And so multimedia content creation, visual storytelling is something that we are leaning further into. And that's going to be part of what we're going to be launching in coming months related to storytelling and really telling that FDA and ORA, our Office of Regulatory Affairs, what we call it, story, which is where we work. And so we want to make sure people understand, what it is to, what we do day to day. I don't think everybody understands it. Sometimes they get us confused with other agencies as well. So we want to make sure it's clear. And then the importance of the work and the folks who do it, the faces of the organization. We want to make sure that information is clear. So that's something that we've been really focusing in on as part of our strategy moving forward, is to really find more creative ways, more creative channels and avenues and storytellers. So even folks out there who've been doing this work, let's get in there and talk with them, share that out with the broader society so they can see what it is, and how we do. So that's really been important for us, going forward, is really helping our stakeholders really understand the work and hearing, their questions and applying what we hear to addressing those questions.
Quick question from Michael about does FDA use Drupal for our website? And Jess, thanks for responding. But yes, so we do use Drupal. We have folks that build that for our behind the scenes, intranet as well as our internet. So that is definitely something that we have our folks using. We're not the experts, though. We have them in our web and digital media branch. Yeah. This one also came in. It kind of goes around like the types of information that's out there. And Rachel asked a question about like how do we inform folks of and what guides us on how, what guidance do we get from the agency on how we inform around those things that we're doing. There's a lot of misinformation or conflicting information out there, and what do we do to try to help with that, to make sure that people get factual information?
Well, one of the things that we do offer is if you have specific questions, we do have what we call our the acronym is ORA, and it stands for the Office of Regulatory Affairs, which is our arm that me, both Stephen, work in, where all of our public affairs specialists are housed. But that is an ORA info box is what we have. And so that is a public email that we take in questions. And that was something we really amped up to during the pandemic. We wanted to make sure people had a direct connect to reach to us to ask questions if they had access to email. And so a lot of those types of things that you may want to know more about are how we make decisions, how we, approve medications, how we do our work to inspect. You can ask those questions directly and our folks will respond to you. And if it is something that is specific to one of the centers that we have within FDA, we will ensure that we address that directly so that you get what you need. But in addition to the web resources that we have, you can certainly access our website. Again, as we mentioned, we did migrate to Drupal over the past few years. So our website is definitely more accessible, and you can certainly find most, if not all, of the answers that you need for a lot of the questions you have. But if you do have questions that you cannot find listed there, you certainly can go to ORA Info. What is it, Stephen? It's ORA Info.
Yep, ORA Info at fda.hhs.gov, G-O-V.
Yes. So certainly send your any questions that you have there as well. But then our folks, again, our folks on the ground, they are experts and they know almost any and everything about FDA. And they're always asked questions in public settings, things that they are attending virtual now. And they have to be ready to respond and answer and address those questions. So that's something we're used to, accustomed to doing, part of the work. It's been part of the work since we've been a program.
And I know we're at time.
We are. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you for attending. We do have one last set of sessions this afternoon that start at 2:15, so it's a good time to take a break. And there is one last spot available for the Birds of the Feather, so feel free to schedule that on Scheda or enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you all for attending Drupal GovCon this week, and we will send out those videos as soon as we have the captions all set. Thank you again, and have a great weekend.